Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 Scottish Open Initial Research Show. I've got quite a bit of an intro for you all, so bear with me. I've got a few announcements as this is a very busy time of the calendar and part of the year for me. So, just a reminder, this is a double tournament week. That's right, the Scottish Open over in North Berwick, United Kingdom, is the main event, if you will. Most of the premier players of the PGA Tour are over there this week, but there is also another PGA Tour event, the Barbasol in Nicholasville, Kentucky, is happening. So that means we have two tournaments on the PGA Tour this week and a full week of shows here at Calls. Tonight, obviously, the Scottish Open Initial Research Show. Tomorrow, Monday, will still be the Scottish Open Data Dive Show. Wednesday will be the DFS Tactics Show for the Scottish Open. But Tuesday evening will be the full Barbasol Championship show. That's right, Initial Research, Data, and DFS Tactics all in one show. That'll be Tuesday night at 9 p.m., just like all of the other shows here at Calls. So a full week of shows for you. So make sure you mark your calendars and set your reminders for 9 p.m. every night this week leading up to the Scottish Open on Wednesday evening. Which, speaking of, since the players are in Scotland this week, by the time the DFS Tactics show rolls around on Wednesday evening, we'll have about an hour or two for all questions, suggestions, any of that kind of stuff before lineups lock. So it'll be a great way to have all of your last minute questions answered. But the DFS Tactics show will still happen. It will still be at 9 p.m. Wednesday evening, but it is only an hour or two before lineups lock, so it'll be a great way to get all of your last minute questions asked and answered. And for this week and next week, for the Open Championship in Barracuda, but for the next 2 weeks, this is just me being transparent and honest with you as the viewer. I don't do anything with the European or the DP World Tour. I won't know those players. I won't have their statistics unless they've come over to the States to play on the PGA Tour. The DP World Tour just isn't my purview. It's nothing that I gather. So if you are wanting some specific questions or remarks on DP World Tour players, go find other content creators that will have that info for you. Anything I offer you would be very artificial, very surface level, and it wouldn't be fair to you if I'm trying to give you advice on the DP World Tour players. I won't have that. I am focused solely on the PGA Tour, so I figured I would give you that up front. As the viewer, you deserve to know that. You feel free to ask any questions. If they don't have any stats on the PGA Tour, however, won't be able to help you out much. Wanted to give you that heads up there. And then I believe, lastly, I am going to try to get on a full week of schedule of shows coming up soon. I'm going to try to start it in August. We'll see how my schedule allows for that. But what I mean in terms of a full week of shows, of course, the usual Sunday, Monday, Wednesday night PGA Tour shows in the mornings and afternoons. I will try to get back onto Twitch, do some live research with you all if anyone's interested, and be much more laid back, music going on in the background, probably play a few games as well. And I have thought about migrating over to Kick as well. So if anyone is interested in any of that content, please reach out to me, chat, social media, message, however, and let me know where your preferred way of watching is. I've thought about starting up with Kick and all of that. I have a Twitch channel. It wasn't very popular. But I'm thinking about trying to get back into a full week of shows, which would also include Friday night chill streams, which would bring back showdown, lineup constructions, but a little bit more gaming there as well. So if you're interested in that, reach out to me and let me know where you would watch that content. I believe that is everything I have in terms of the immediacy for this week. Trying to hit a few highlights there. So let's get on with our regular intro, shall we? All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best tool out there for your money. I simply believe that there are a lot of great tools out there that offer a wide range of statistics and analysis. I simply believe Fantasy National is best. Go give them or check them out. Just simply well worth your investment. Best tool out there. In the description to the show, there are videos to all of the social media. This is my Twitter and Instagram, where I will have some research around the Barbasol, absolutely, this week. But it's going to be very hard for me to have anything for the Scottish Open, especially since we only have 1 year of data in Fantasy National. So the research this week is probably going to be around the Barbasol, but I'll still have some research for you all for the PGA Tour. I'll post that to Twitter and Instagram, so give me a follow at your preferred social media site. Twitter is also where I place my betting card for the PGA Tour. That will be no different both for the Scottish Open and the Barbasol. That'll be posted Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show. Might honestly be after the Scottish Open starts as well, with everything that I've got going on this week. But the betting card will be out there. So if you would like to see the wagers that I make on the PGA Tour, give me a follow over at Twitter. And Twitter is also where I do my quick hitting baseball content, something that I really want to get into as well. So trying to get back onto a routine schedule here. Summer is usually pretty busy for me. But if you want to see some quick hitting baseball content, give me a follow over Twitter. And then lastly, for the social media, Gabe's Twitter is also in the description. Writes a very good article called The Fringe. And on Wednesday, I expect that we will be in his Substack chat. I need to confirm that with him, since lineups will be locking pretty darn close to the end of my show. But he writes a very good article called The Fringe. I highly suggest you give him a follow and subscribe to his article called The Fringe. It's a great way to start your week. I have some information around the Renaissance Club thanks to Gabe from his article. So go give him a follow and subscribe there. And then lastly, for this intro, I think, we are live. Chat is open. I want to hear from you all. How was your John Deere? Which reminds me, I need to give some shout outs, so I'll be doing that here in a moment. But how was your John Deere Classic? What do you know of the Renaissance Club in North Berwick? What do you think is going to play well there? Are you interested in the Barbasol? Do you have any early leans for the Scottish or the Barbasol? All of that good stuff. Normally I would get into the initial research, but I do have two shout outs from the community this week. First off, to Pop's Call, not in golf, but for baseball. He had a couple of top 25 lineups throughout this past week and had a pretty solid return on his investment this week in daily fantasy baseball. So congratulations to Pop's Call on your success. And then a member both here and over at Gabe's chat and a subscriber to his article, Evan Skinner, also had a good week. His was focused more so around the showdown lineups, both Saturday and Sunday for the John Deere. I believe he came into the top 10, might have been the top 15, but I still want to congratulate Evan on your success in showdown this past week for the John Deere. So congratulations to you two. And if you had success for the John Deere Classic or in any other way imaginable, I know football will be coming around. I don't have anything to really do with football. It's not my area of expertise by any means. But if you have success in any wagers, in any DFS, let me know. I want to be able to shout out members of the community who have success here. Believe that's it for this elongated intro. So let's do our initial research for the 2023 Scottish Open. And a little bit of a different start this week than what we normally do for the initial research show. You see Windfinder is up here, and we're not going to pay a whole lot of attention to it, but I did want to make sure and see if what you think of classical link style golf and its weather was in the forecast. As we will see, last year it was very, very difficult over at the Renaissance Club for the Scottish Open, and that's a big part of why it was just a terrible tournament for me. I got nothing right last year, so I'm going to have a lot to improve on. With that said, it does look like we've got quite a bit of wind and some rain in the forecast for North Berwick, and I believe the wind finder station is called Darlton. I'm probably butchering that 10 ways from Sunday, but this is a weather station or wind station right on the course of the Renaissance Club. You can see quite a bit of wind Thursday, some rain perhaps late Wednesday evening and into Friday and Saturday, and then Sunday looks awful. Rain, chilly, windy, gusts into the 30s. Just looks like your typical, what you would think, Open Championship style weather. So I did want to bring up the forecast. We will obviously be looking at this tomorrow night for the Day to Dive show and Wednesday for the DFS Tactics show, but wanted to give you a first look in case you are going to be using this information in your wagers and perhaps some players that you're going to be focusing on early this week. So there's a look at the forecast, and there's no GCSAA tournament fact sheet. We are overseas, so no specific information regarding the Renaissance Club. Everything that we have, or at least I have for you this evening, comes courtesy of Fantasy National and any historic conditions, which was from last year. So with that, we'll take a look at the player page view just very, very quickly. All of the premier players. I know John Rahm is not in the field this week, and there's another top 10 player that the name's escaping me, but Scotty Scheffler, Xander, Ricky, Cantley, Victor Hovland, Rory, Sung Jae. I mean, the who's who, generally speaking, of the PGA Tour is in Scotland this week for the Scottish Open to tune up for the Open Championship. So don't want to go too much into this. Let's just go ahead and jump into the course breakdown here at Fantasy National. And I'll have a little bit of some supplement for this in Microsoft Excel. We'll look at the scorecard, and the scorecard that I have is slightly different than the scorecard here or the breakdown in Fantasy National, but it's not by a whole lot. I went to Pro Visualizer to grab whole yardages. In Fantasy National has slightly different numbers here, but nothing too terribly drastic. So first thing I want to do, 9th and 10th most difficult hole, figure out where par is. And remember, this was a very difficult tournament last year. Xander wins at -7. So a very, very low winning total. The cut line was +4. Just played very, very difficult. We can see that at least from last year, as that's the only year of data we have. 9th was a tenth of a shot over par. 10th was 10th most difficult hole. Played to that as well. We have to get to, let's see, basically the 13th played right at par, just a little bit under it. The 14th was a tenth of a shot easier. So in between the 13th and 14th most difficult holes is where par falls. That classifies as a difficult tournament or a difficult course. You see the most difficult hole, the 18th, played to 0.6 of a shot over par. So a par there was a fantastic score. You had a couple of holes here, almost a third of a shot over par. Actually, it's a little bit more than a third of a shot over par. 0.4 of a shot over par. 0.3, 0.2 of a shot over par. Just a lot of holes where bogey and even some double bogey crept in. Again, the weather was awful last year. Very cold, rainy, miserable. Looks like we have the potential for that again this year, so it could play difficult again. There are a couple of easy gettable holes, mostly the par 5s. The par 5 third plays to 0.4 of a shot under par. 2% eagle rate, not the best. It's a decent eagle rate, but certainly a birdieable hole. You have a semi-drivable par 4, and I say semi-drivable, all depends on the wind and the conditions, tees and all that stuff, but semi-drivable par 4, you see it yielded a birdie about a quarter of the time, played under par. The other par 5s, 15 hundredths, let's see, 1/10. Nothing easy by any means, but your best opportunities and decent birdie chances, but clearly more scores over par than under par here. Because we are across the pond, we don't have shot link. We will not have strokes gained by shot type for the Scottish Open. Average strokes gained by hole by par, however, we will have. So for your top 10s last year, and this is all based only on last year's, it's the only year of data we have, par 5s dominated. They were the holes that you were able to score on, and you held on for dear life on those other holes. It's a little surprising to see that the par 3s are so little in terms of strokes gained, especially since there are 5 of them. This is a par 71 here at the Renaissance Club. You have 4 par 5s from my understanding. You have 4 par 5s, 600, 594, let's see, no, excuse me, 3 par 5s, and then 576. But you had 5 par 3s, or at least that's what was listed on Pro Visualizer. Let's see, we had the 6th, the 9th, the 12th, the 14th, the 12th, the 14th, and the 17th. So I thought this was a par 71. Let's see, at Pro Visualizer, the 3rd and the 7th. Okay, so the 7th is listed as a par 4 here. So it might be a par 70. I think we might be looking at a par 70, and I might need to fix something for you all when we go to Microsoft Excel. Again, I will double check this tomorrow and have this corrected for you all for tomorrow night's show. Shouldn't affect too much of what we look at today, especially since we're going to be looking at some big picture data, big picture view. But it looks like we're dealing with a par 70. I'm still surprised that the par 3s are mitigated in importance. There's 5 of them here. It didn't make a lot of sense. I understand why the par 5s are the highest. That's where you got to get your birdies. Now for the top 5s, this is where it starts to really matter. Really matter. The par 4s and the par 3s. And then for your winners, or for Xander, he took advantage of the par 5s and then held on for the par 4s and par 3s. So the par 5s are going to be pretty darn important. I still think I am leaning towards looking at this top 5 for these par 3s. There are 5 par 3s. They are going to be important this week. So it's surprising to see the top 10s not matter. Xander apparently didn't play them all that well. He just really took advantage of the par 5s. So there's a look at the average strokes gained by hole by par. Again, looks like we have 3 par 5s and 5 par 3s as a par 70. Hole composition. And again, what we have will be a little bit, or what I have from Pro Visualizer will be a tad bit different than this, but not terribly. The 5 par 3s. One very short one. 145 is what I had. 147 here at Fantasy National. So very short par 4 or par 3, excuse me. A short par 3. but 3 of the 5 par 3s measure from 200 to 225 yards. Long par 3s, and it can be difficult, especially with the wind, the conditions. It's just seemingly links style golf. Moving to the par 4s, we do have that semi-drivable par 4. Measures to about 336, I believe, is what it was, 337. So semi-drivable, all depends on the weather conditions and the tees of the day. 3 par 4s from 400 to 450. The majority of the par 4s do measure 450 to 500. We do have a long par 4. It might be 2, actually, at 500 plus. And then your par 3s, or excuse me, your par 5s, 3 par 5s, 2 from 550 to 600, 1 from 600 to 650. I believe that is the 600 yarder. So I have all of the par 5s measuring to here, as I believe Pro Visualizer lists it at 598. So most of the par 5s will measure into this bucket here. Historic cut line, as I mentioned, or excuse me, sorry, approach shot. Approach shot distribution, this is what I also had. And we'll see in Pro Visualizer, almost half of the approach shots came from 0 to 75 yards. That's because of how difficult the course was. Players were scrambling. These were approach shots for their third shot, not their second. On the majority of those par 4s, the par 5s, a lot of players had to lay up because of the wind and the difficult. So yes, lots of 0 to 75 last year, and we'll go into Pro Visualizer and see that I've got a lot of the same. It'll change if the weather is better. Cut line last year was +4, and we can see really that emphasized here. 21% bogeys, 14 or 15% birdies. This doubles bar is pretty high. It's one of the highest double bogey bars I have seen. I can actually get my cursor to highlight it, whereas the eagles almost non-existent. So you put the two on top, birdies and eagles, stack them, bogeys and doubles, stack them. A lot more scores over par last year than there were under par. Driving accuracy, much lower here. Much lower. 48, almost 49% versus 62% on the PGA Tour. Green regulation percentage was a lot lower last year here than the average tour event, and players were much less successful scrambling than the average tour event. 3 putts per round. This is not surprising. The size of the greens, they are generally kept really slow, which is very different from what American style golf is. So 3 putts really were a big factor, and they were the week after at the Open Championship. Driving distance actually is longer here, though. Even though it's not that the players weren't afraid of going into the rough, it is link style golf. It is difficult, gorse and fescue and all that nastiness stuff. But from what I've gathered, the Renaissance Club does have a lot of rollout. And that's why you get a lot of driving distance here. And there's not a lot of forced layups either. So players had 3 woods in their hand. Maybe not necessarily driver, but they had longer clubs in their hand than what you would think for playing link style golf. And you had somewhat generous fairways and lots of rollout that's contributing to the driving distance. And proximity, my working thesis on this is because there were so many 0 to 75 yard approach shots, is that if the player was hitting the green in regulation, that's why they're a lot closer. 27.25 versus 29 at the average tour event. But there's a look at the Renaissance Club from a scorecard and graphical view from what we do have in Fantasy National. Before we go to Microsoft Excel, I'll take you to the historic conditions. Not a whole lot we're going to be able to gather. Again, it was very, very difficult. There were 2 rounds where it was easy, 2 rounds it was difficult to hit the fairway. We don't have any green data. My guess would be these are somewhat close to bent, but that's conjecture on my part. So that is why we have such limited data. It was the first year that the PGA Tour was a part of the Scottish Open, or vice versa, I should say. The Scottish Open was a part of the PGA Tour. All right, so with that, instead of going to our player page view, let me go to Microsoft Excel. And again, this will be slightly different. Slightly. I need to zoom out just a bit. I think you all can, hopefully you all can see that. It's slightly different than what we just saw. Again, these are whole yardages per Pro Visualizer. I believe the official scorecard or the listed yardage I've seen is 7,293 yards, whereas Pro Visualizer had it at 7,277. You see, I do have 4 par 5s here, so I do need to make this change for you all. There are now 2 here, and I will need to back that off to down to 3. But according to Pro Visualizer, we match on these par 3s. One very short, one short, but the majority, 3 of them from 200 to 225. We had the same semi-drivable par 4, Fantasy National and Pro Visualizer. Couple of 400 450s. The majority are in 450 to 500. And we now have 2 long par 4s, thanks to Pro Visualizer, if this is indeed a par 70. So majority of our par 4s are going to be in probably the 450 to 500 range, as even these 400 to 450s, you've got a 446, which is going to probably play into the 450 to 500 at least once. Probably more than that during the week. You have a 418 and a 412, so a little bit on the shorter end here. But that 446 will come into here. The 500 plus, you had the 505, which is what Fantasy National has as the par 4, and then a 506. So longer par 4s here, especially if the weather is bad. And then according to Pro Visualizer, all 3, or all 4, but now all 3 par 5s measure 550 to 6. We have 598, 557, that's the converted. So 598, 591, and 572. All right, what Pro Visualizer will help us with a little bit against Fantasy National. Fantasy National showed that a bunch of the estimated proximities were the proximity approach shots were 0 to 75. I've got that matching here. However, Pro Visualizer will always set up a par 5 as a true 3-shotter, and the drivable par 4 is always set as a layup. So if indeed all of the par 5s are attackable, then you would move all of this over here, depending on what a player will do on the drivable par 4 if they choose to lay up or not. But if the weather is anywhere decent, I would envision that the majority of our approach shots are going to be in the 175 and up range. You see, Pro Visualizer estimates 1 from 100 to 125, only 2 from 150 to 175. Majority of them were on those longer par 4s, 175 to 200. And then, again, the drivable par 4 and all of the par 5s were set as true 3-shotters and a layup. So you can realistically move all of them into this 200 plus. So there's the estimated proximity per Pro Visualizer. Wanted to give you all that information this evening as well. Okay, with that, I'm going to close this out. We'll come back to Fantasy National. This will be a bit of a shorter show with only 1 year of data. I did not do the early look file. We're just going to go through that leaderboard tomorrow in the data dive and see who played in the tournament, who played it well. There are ample ways to see who has played the Scottish Open well in years prior, if that is something you are interested in. So referring all the way back to let me back up even that. You'll see a few players start. These players have withdrawn from the Scottish Open. They were listed in the field, have withdrawn, most of them due to playing in the Barbasol this week. Mark Hubbard, I have not seen him be listed in the field for the Barbasol. I've just seen him withdraw from the Scottish. All 8 of these other players we will see Tuesday night in the Barbasol full show. All 8 of these players are playing in Nicholasville, Kentucky this week. So they are not over in Scotland. So if you see a player starred, it is because they have chosen to play the Barbasol, and in Mark Hubbard's case has just withdrawn. But referring back to Windfinder at the beginning of this, let's just take a look at players who have played well in the wind. This is Open Championship style golf, links style golf, I imagine. And according to the forecast, it's going to be pretty poor weather. So in the past 18 months or so, your top players, when a round has been in moderate and windy conditions, those players have been Justin Thomas, Sung Jae, Scotty Scheffler, Xander Schauffele, Matt Fitzpatrick, Rory, Max Homa, Shane Lowry, Sam Burns, and Jordan Spieth. Let's see. Nothing to do with course length. This is basically right at 7,300, which would be very long for a par 70, but still just measures to, right in between the boundaries for being short or long. So instead, let's just take a look at difficult. If the winds are indeed as picked up as the forecast seems to be, if it plays similarly than it did last year, it's going to be pretty difficult. So your top players in rounds that are difficult since the beginning of 2022: Scotty Scheffler, Rory, Matt Fitzpatrick, Victor Hovland, Wyndham Clark, Shane Lowry, Xander, Max Homa, Tommy Fleetwood, and Patrick Cantlay. A lot of overlap. Obviously, this is it played a lot like a major last year, and these are your major champions for the most part the past 18 months. Scotty Scheffler, Matt Fitzpatrick, Wyndham Clark, Xander, generally really good in majors. Victor, generally really good in majors. Shane Lowry loves the Open Championship in this style of weather. So, I have the wrong page view. I apologize. So there you go. There's your top players when it's difficult. So yeah, let's see. We'll take a look at a couple of different things here. Let's bring this into 2023. We'll really look into some deep dive data tomorrow for the Data Dive show. But your top strokes gained approach players this calendar year over at the Renaissance Club this week: Scotty Scheffler, Xander, Ricky Fowler, Wyndham Clark, Gary Woodland, Tom Hoge, Rory, Corey Connors, Victor Hovland, and Max Homa. Let's see. And I'm not going to do anything with putting. Around the green might be, but instead, I think let's just take a look at some scrambling. That might be the better way to look at what we want to look at here. So I'll bring this again back out to the start of 2022, and this rough is long. It's what links style rough is known for. So I know I've done around the green in long rough, but let's just take a look at scrambling in general in long rough. So our top scramblers in long rough: Matt Fitzpatrick, Taylor Montgomery, Mackenzie Hughes, Christian Bezaydnout, Tommy Fleetwood, JT Poston, Ben Griffin, Lucas Herbert, and Brendan Todd. Okay. And then I guess to round out the Fantasy National portion, let's just take a look at par 5s. Probably the best way to go about that. Just par 5s in general, since they appear to be pretty darn important. They're your best scoring opportunities for sure. So our top par 5 performers in the field over at the Renaissance Club: Ricky Fowler, Scotty Scheffler, Patrick Cantlay, Jordan Spieth, Wyndham Clark, Tommy Fleetwood, Max Homa, Ludwig Aberg, Andrew Putnam, Justin Rose, and Aaron Rai. Again, I've got Harry Hickstart. He is playing over in Nicholasville for the Barbasol. Okay, so there's a look at our top performers in a few of these metrics and whatnot. Again, I mentioned it's going to be a little bit of a shorter show since we don't have the early look file, but what I can do is show you the comparison course for the Scottish. It'll only be 1 year of data, so we don't want to put a whole lot into it, but we can at least see for 1 year how it played against average full field courses. Again, we do not have shot link data, so nothing in terms of strokes gained. We move into the driving category, driving and greens and accuracy generally. Driving distance really didn't seem to matter for the players that finished in the top 30. Fairways, it was as good drives gained. And I can see myself wanting to focus on that again this year. Players are either hitting the fairway or they're good enough to play from the rough and still hit the green in regulation. That seems like it's a great statistic for link style golf. So probably looking at good drives gained this year. And this week for the Scottish. Greens, okay. Sand saves kind of really didn't matter. Scoring, as you would probably expect, if it's a difficult tournament and pars are generally good scores, if you're able to avoid bogeys, you're going to be gaining quite a bit. We'll also see if double bogey avoidance is something we might want to look at, but at least in early thought process this week, I'm focused on the bogey avoidance. As you see, it is 12.5% more important. Birdies weren't all that much. You just had to avoid bogeys. A little surprising, considering what we saw from the top 10s and the top 5s and the winner. But if you expand that out to the top 30, in fact, 16.5% the par 3s were more important. That makes a whole lot of sense, especially since there are 5 of them here at the Renaissance Club. So I would have thought par 3s would have made a whole lot of difference. Now you see, there is supposedly one that measures to this length on the scorecard, but apparently it played 0 to 150 every single round last year. The majority of the par 3s measure to, or come to 32.5% more important. So makes a lot of sense there. Moving into the par 4s, a little bit mitigated. Now I would expect that if you have 4 or 5 par 3s, you still have 3 par 5s, you got fewer par 4s. So in total, they weren't all that important. I'm surprised to see that the 0 to 350 is not there. My guess is I mistakenly removed it, because I'm pretty sure it was still a drivable par 4 last year. 350 to 4 is there. Let me fix that for you all very, very quickly here. Scottish. Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, par 4s. There we go. There's that. Apparently it played 350 to 4 last year. Although on the scorecard it measures to 337. So we'll have to see. Again, the majority of our par 4s fall 450 to 5, so it's probably where we're going to put our focus. I know this is a huge number. Not every single course has a 500 plus par 4, so I don't want to get too hung up on this humongous number here. Is it me, or is that view a little scrunched? I'll have to zoom in for you all. I don't want to get too hung up on this huge number. We look at a 450 to 5s, probably the most. And then in terms of par 5s, they apparently all played 600 to 650 last year, and that's why you have such a humongous number here. So a little bit of incomplete data, especially since we don't have shot link over there. Only 1 year data. But we're going to do the best we can. We'll really dig into the leaderboard from last year and see what played well and what didn't for the Data Dive show. But that's what I have for you all in terms of an initial research for the Scottish Open at the Renaissance Club. Thanks for tuning in and watching and listening, supporting the channel. It's always appreciated by liking the videos, commenting, subscribing. Congratulations to those of you who had success at the John Deere. It was another poor performance on my end. So we're going to try and right the ship at a tournament where I struggled last year, so there's a lot to improve upon. I'm going to try to improve our success this year and this week for the Scottish Open. So for all the wagers you made this past week for the John Deere Classic, for all the contests you entered this past week for the John Deere Classic, and until I see you tomorrow night for the Data Dive show, may all your bets be profitable.